Okay, welcome to the Office of Undergraduate Research Education series. Today is on academic success skills and time management, and our speaker is Taylor Johnson. This is a virtual event and it's being recorded. We ask that everyone mute yourself and turn off your camera to ensure the best experience. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat feature or you can unmute when invited by the speaker, Taylor. And we ask everyone to fill out this event evaluation after the event. But if you are a Europe scholar, in order to receive credit for attending this event, you do need to fill out the evaluation form. And I will put the link in the chat feature. And I just wanted to remind everyone, the mission of the Office of Undergraduate Research is to facilitate and promote undergraduate, student, faculty, collaborative research, and creative works in all disciplines throughout the University of Utah campus. In recognition that excellence requires diversity, we pursue this mission through equitable programming that promotes diverse representation and social justice. And we would like to acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. And now I will turn it over to our speaker today, Taylor Johnson.
Yes, hello everybody. As Shelley mentioned, my name is Taylor Johnson. I work as a full-time coordinator in the Learning Center here at the University of Utah. I run our supplemental instruction program. And I'm also currently a graduate student here. I'm getting my master's in educational leadership and policy. So I'm right there with you, learning about how to manage your time as a student. That's something that I am actively working on as well. And so I hope that what I've prepared today can help you find that balance. I want to start off by saying it's important to remember that when we are trying to make big life adjustments like this, that one, it's not going to go perfectly right away. And two, you can't do everything all at once. So as a reminder, as we talk about lots of different strategies today related to time management, remember that it'll take time. Be gentle with yourself. And maybe start with one or two things that you feel like could work for you and work from there. Don't try and do everything immediately because we don't want you to burn out as you're continually working on your time management skills. So yes, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about time management today. Here's a brief overview of our agenda. I recognize that some of these things may seem like they're not related to time management. But I recognize that there's a lot more that goes into time management than just, managing a calendar, for example. So we're also going to talk about some critical thinking skills, a study strategy that I feel like could be very beneficial that can also maybe help you manage your time a little bit better. We'll talk about procrastination, how to combat it, maybe why it happens. And then I'll also take some time very briefly at the end to talk about Learning Center services so that you can be aware of the other services that we offer that can help you not only to manage your time, but further improve your academic success skills. So first, let's talk about time management. As we're discussing, I want you to think about these three questions. What are you currently doing to manage your time? What works and what doesn't work? And how do you help others with time management? If somebody came to you and they said, I am struggling to manage my time, what should I do? Think about what you would say to them. And if you don't know what you would say to them, then you came to the right place because we're here to talk about time management together. So just keep those questions in mind. I find that guided, reflective questions like this can help you get more out of a presentation if you're kind of actively thinking about what you're already doing, what's working, what's not, and so on. So some general planning tips to get us started. I think the biggest and most important tip that I could give to a student who is looking for time management advice is to break up large tasks into smaller ones. and then set goals in order to stay on track. I personally struggle with this a lot. I currently am in the process of getting evaluated for ADHD. And one of the big things that I notice in my personal life is that I tend to view tasks I need to complete as one big thing, and it stresses me out and makes me really anxious. And how I combat that is breaking down that big task into the smaller steps that need to be done, because it not only makes the task feel a little bit less overwhelming, but it also helps me more accurately schedule out my time. So I know I need to do this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and so on. So instead of looking at this big task that needs to be completed, it's going to take me hours or, over the course of a couple of weeks. Instead, it's just today I'm working on this part of it, and then I already planned out when I'm going to work on the rest of it. So that's the first thing. I'm also going to talk about a few strategies. One of those is a reverse to-do list, and I'll talk about more what that is later. I also think it's important to create accountability. It can be really, really hard to make any kind of adjustment, not just time management, but any life change, if you don't have somebody that you can report to. And that person can be yourself. But regardless of who you decide to be accountable to, make sure that you have somebody that you can check in with. So whether that's maybe you want to talk to your therapist about it. The University of Utah has student success coaches where their whole job is to meet with students and talk about what they can do to be more successful and set goals together and make a plan to achieve that goal. So you could work with a student success coach. You could work with one of the staff at the Learning Center, because we offer individual learning consultations for students that are seeking to improve their academic success skills. I'll talk about that more at the end of the presentation. It could be a partner, it could be a family member, it could be a journal, right? Maybe you just write in your journal every single night, here's what I did today, here's what I want to work on tomorrow. Regardless of what it is, there's lots of options available to you, and I would encourage you to find somebody that you can be accountable to, however you feel like that best fits for you. It's important to get organized and prioritize. I'm going to talk about ways that we can do both of those things in this presentation. And then finally, as a general note, you should keep some kind of calendar or planner that you can use to kind of compile all of these things and keep track of them. You can use whatever you prefer. Some people prefer paper planners. Some people prefer digital planners. Some just like a calendar. There's Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, Outlook Calendar, whatever you like. There's no like one best method, but I encourage you to keep a calendar or a planner, because that kind of keeps everything in one spot. It can help you manage your time. It can help you be aware of how much free time you actually have. It makes sure that you're not going to miss any deadlines for assignments or projects or anything you're doing with research. If things need to be done at a certain point, a calendar or a planner is a really helpful way to do that. So I mentioned breaking something down into smaller tasks can make it more manageable. So one of the examples that I have in this presentation for us is looking at a 5-page research paper. For some of us, writing may feel like an overwhelming task, where we either don't feel like we're very good at it, or we don't know where to start, or maybe it's just not fun. Maybe it's not engaging to write a really long paper. But one way that you can try and combat that is breaking it down into smaller tasks. So instead of looking at it like, I have to write a 5-page paper, I keep struggling to say that, you can break it down into smaller tasks. So for example, choosing a topic, that's your first step. What are you going to write about? Finding sources, making an outline, writing a draft, editing a draft, writing the bibliography and getting your sources together, scheduling an appointment with the writing center, making final edits, turning in the paper. So breaking that one task down into smaller tasks not only can maybe help you feel more prepared to tackle it because you know each of the steps, but it can also help you manage your time, because breaking something down into smaller tasks makes it easier to distribute those tasks more equally over a period of time than trying to do all of that on the day before the paper is due, for example. We've all been there. Don't feel ashamed for doing that. That's just a reality of life sometimes, where we haven't managed our time super well, or maybe an emergency pops up and we really only have time to do it at the last minute. But the goal of this presentation is to maybe put some strategies in place so that's not our default option, where maybe we can work on spreading things out over time. So how do we do that? Well, I mentioned earlier something called a reverse to-do list. A reverse to-do list is essentially where you choose a task, and instead of working from the beginning to the end, you start at the end and work backwards and identify, all right, if the final goal is I have to turn this paper in on Friday, what do I need to do each day before that to make sure that I meet that goal, while also giving myself time to do all the other things I'm expected to do. In college, you're going to wear a lot of different hats. You are a college student. Some of you might have jobs. Some of you might, I assume most, if not all of you, are doing some kind of research. You might be doing other extracurricular things. You've got a lot to do. And hopefully this can help you identify how you can complete your tasks while also making sure that you can complete everything else that isn't this. So for example, here on this slide, imagine you have a 5-page research paper that's due 2 Fridays from now. You start working backwards. If it's due on that second Friday, what needs to be done before that? Well, first thing is right the day before. Maybe that's when you're making your final edits and getting the paper ready to turn in. You've given yourself time to work on it. And then that final day before it's due, anything that needs to be changed or edited or any final additions, you can do them then. Maybe Tuesday is when you take your paper to the writing center. If you aren't aware, the University of Utah has a writing center and their services are free to all students. They're located on the 2nd floor of the Marriott Library. I don't know the room number off the top of my head, but their website is writingcenter.utah.edu. They can meet with you in person or online, and they can help you with any kind of writing you're doing, whether it's a research paper, a resume, a cover letter, a scholarship application. If any of you are involved in the process of like grant writing for research, whatever it is, they can help you. So maybe Tuesday is the day that you take this paper into the writing center and have them look over it and help you identify what you could do to make it better or what needs to be changed. Monday is maybe when you write your bibliography. So you format all your sources according to the format that your professor has requested. And that way, when you take it into the writing center, they can make sure that it's done correctly. Saturday is maybe the day that you schedule that appointment with the writing center for that following Tuesday. Friday, you're editing your first draft. Thursday, you're writing your first draft. Wednesday, you just make an outline of the paper. So what do I want to say in my introduction? What's my first point, my second point, my third point? What's going to be in my conclusion? Tuesday, maybe you just spend that day taking a few minutes to find some sources so that you can be prepared to cite those to support your arguments in the paper. And then finally, Monday, you just choose your topic. So hopefully this concept of a reverse to-do list helps you to recognize that tasks not only can be less overwhelming when they're broken down, but you also spend theoretically less time doing everything because you've planned out when you're going to do it. And since you only have to worry about doing that one task that day, that hopefully gives you time to manage everything else you need to do. You know, like Monday through Friday, you still need to go to class, go to work, meet with your professors, go to the gym, go to the grocery store, whatever it is you're doing. You have a ton of things to balance. And hopefully this can help you to recognize how you can space out these smaller tasks throughout whatever period of time you're looking at, so that you can not only meet your deadlines, but also maximize the amount of time you have to spend doing things. Another important strategy that I have learned during my time at the Learning Center is managing priorities. So not just how do I break down my tasks into smaller pieces, but how do I also identify what tasks are like more important and more urgent than others, so that I can balance my time in that sense. So this is what I call a time management square. I got this slide from the counseling center and they didn't have like a specific name for it. So I just call it a time management square. It's kind of like a Punnett square from biology, right? Or if you have like uppercase A and lowercase a, and that tells you like how the genetics break down, right? So on the top of the square, you have importance. And then on the left side of the square, you have urgency. So then you'll have 4 categories. You'll have high urgency, low importance, high urgency, high importance, low urgency, low importance, and low urgency, high importance. Creating a square like this can help you to identify what things are really, really urgent and I need to get them done. What things aren't very urgent and I can maybe put them off until later. What things are really important, but not urgent yet. That could be like an end of semester paper or maybe like a final exam. Not super urgent because we have until December to get ready for those, but it's super important. And you probably need to be thinking about what you're going to do leading up to that time to prepare for it. And then, what things are really urgent, but not super important. That could be like, you need to pay your rent, for example. Maybe rent is due. I mean, obviously paying your rent is important, but just think of it like that, where every day, the first of the month comes, you pay your rent. So it's urgent. You need to make sure that you do that. But not important in the sense of like you just do it and then it's done. Maybe that wasn't a great example, but hopefully you understand kind of what I'm trying to convey. So creating something like this, whether you just like write it down in your journal or maybe you make a digital version to sort your priorities, I think can be very helpful in recognizing what needs to be done first, what can wait, what things do I need to work on over the course of weeks or months because they're important but not super urgent, and then what are the things that are low importance, low urgency. I can put those on the back burner if I need to, yeah, hopefully that made sense. I am going to come back for questions at the end. So if there's any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm going to continue moving on. So another important concept in time management is looking ahead. That's kind of what I've been talking about over the last 2 slides of how do we look ahead so that we don't get swamped. The example I have here on this slide is don't get swamped with homework during a test week so you have time to study, but that could be anything, right? Maybe, it's not even school stuff. Maybe you're applying to a program and the program deadline is in December and you want to look ahead so that the week that that deadline is due, your program application is ready to go instead of having to, reach out to mentors and get cover letters and write like a personal statement, whatever you're doing. It's important that we look ahead so that we don't get swamped and then we don't have the time to do our best work. Or maybe we don't even have time to complete those tasks. Again, the example here on the second bullet point is plan out when and how you're going to study, but that can be anything again, right? It doesn't have to just be studying. You should plan out when and how you're going to do anything. When you're making a calendar, whether you're using Outlook in your student email, maybe you're using a paper planner or a digital planner, don't just say like when you're going to do it. How are you going to do it? Where are you going to go? Are there people you need to talk to? How long is it going to take you? The classic who, what, when, where, why, how questions. It's important to ask yourself that. And set goals to stay motivated. As cheesy as it might sound, goals can be such a motivating presence in your life, and they don't have to be grand or lofty. Your goal could be something like, I want to work on my final paper at least 2 weeks in advance so that I'm not writing it the day before. That's a goal. That can be motivating. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to work on my final paper every day for 10 minutes. So by the time the end of the semester rolls around, I'm done. It can be that if you want it to be, but I want to just say that break down any like preconceived notions you have of what a goal needs to look like and just make the goal that works for you. It doesn't need to be anything except what works for you. If you want to work on something 2 weeks in advance, great. If you feel like you're, like me, you're such a procrastinator where a lot of the times you feel like you're doing things at the last minute, maybe set a goal to work on something 2 days before, right? At the very least, you're improving, right? You've made an incremental increase in the amount of time that you had to work on something. Start small and then just be kind to yourself, because nobody is instantly perfect at everything. Nobody sets a perfect goal right away, and nobody achieves all their goals right away. If you do, congratulations, I envy you. But most of us need some time to work on these things. And then finally, cramming, again, that's related to studying, but that can be anything, right? You're not going to do your best work, even if it's not homework. If we go back to that application question, it could be a job application, scholarship application, grad school application. Don't save it for the last minute. Not only is it not going to be your greatest work, but cramming only makes you familiar with content. It doesn't really give you time to think about what you're saying, why, how it's important. Cramming for a test might help you ram your way through it, but then you forget everything pretty quickly after the test. Writing an application or a paper the night before, yeah, it might make you complete the task. You might pass the class because your paper went through, or you might be considered for whatever you applied for. But maybe you'll have to talk about your application. And since you did it at the last second, you might not be as prepared, and it may end up coming back to bite you in the application or in the interview process. So a technique that we can use to help us kind of do all these things, how can we look ahead so we don't get swamped? How can we plan out when and how we're going to study and stay motivated? And how do we prevent cramming? There's a technique called the pomodoro technique. You may have heard of it before. It's okay if you haven't. I've seen it making its rounds on the internet and TikTok and stuff like that. But if you haven't seen it, essentially what it is that you pick a task and then set a timer, work on that task until the timer's done, and then you take a break. Really simple. This slide here says for every 25 minutes of studying, you can take a 5-minute break. You can adjust that how you want. I wouldn't recommend doing more than like 45 minutes at a time, because once you get into an hour, not only is that a longer period of time, but you can also lose motivation. Sometimes if you're like focused on one task for such a long time without a break. So whatever it looks like for you, you can adjust it how you want. I usually do 30 minutes of a task, 10-minute break, like a 3-to-1 ratio. So essentially you set a timer, you'd work for 30 minutes and then take a 10-minute break. That break is important because not only does it allow your brain time to go and relax, it also can help with long-term comprehension of material, because our brain stores material in our long-term memory during downtime. Most of that happens while we're sleeping. But even a break where you have been working on a task, maybe you were studying for one of your courses, you studied for 30 minutes, you take a 10-minute break, that already helps to start that process of, okay, I am processing what I've learned. I'm going to start storing that in my long-term memory and I can call upon it later. The break also helps you stay motivated because it can be kind of like operant conditioning for my psychology folks out there, right? You get a reward because you completed a task, and the reward is the break. And that can be like a self-fulfilling cycle where you are motivating yourself because you know, after I do this for 30 minutes, I get a 10-minute break and I get to go to Starbucks and get my favorite drink, or I get to watch funny TikToks, or I get to play video games, or whatever it is that you want to do during your break. The break also helps to eliminate distractions. So if you need to go to the bathroom, if you need a snack or a drink, you need to take a pet outside, you need to respond to a text or an email, you need to call your mom, you need to, whatever it is. The break is the time that you can take care of those things so that nothing is distracting you when you are working on your task. So Pomodoro technique can be done in succession if you want. So you could do like a 30-minute study session, 10-minute break, and then you rinse and repeat. If you do 3 or 4 in a row, you should take a longer break after that. So if you do like 3 30-minute Pomodoros in a row with 10-minute breaks in between, after you've done the third one, you should take a 20 or 30-minute break because you've been working on something and you probably need more time to actually eat some, like a meal, or go on a walk, or maybe you're going to class, or whatever it might be. Final thing I want to mention about the Pomodoro technique is to listen to your brain. If you lose focus before the timer is up, take a break. Again, be kind to yourself. I know that a lot of us, when we come to college, we can face things like imposter syndrome or feel like we need to do everything perfectly. We have like perfectionist tendencies. Try and throw those out of your mind as best you can, because not only are they kind of self-destructive and it's going to make you even less motivated to work, but they're also just not helpful in general. Beating yourself up for losing focus before a timer isn't going to make you any better at keeping your focus later. And it's okay because, like I mentioned at the very beginning, everybody has to start from somewhere. You don't need to be perfect at like a technique right away to use it. So if you lose focus before the 25-minute mark, take a break and start over. If you're feeling super productive, maybe keep going. Maybe you set a timer for 20 minutes, but you're feeling it. You're in the zone. You know that you could keep cranking out whatever you're doing. Maybe go for 30, 45 minutes and then take a longer break after. You know your brain better than anybody else, so listen to your brain. That's the Pomodoro technique in a nutshell. There's lots of good like articles or podcasts on it. If you just Google it, you can find tons of resources. And there's also specific apps that can be like Pomodoro timers if you're interested in exploring those. I can't vouch for any of them personally because I just use my phone timer, but there are other additional resources out there if you're interested. Okay, critical thinking. I'm going to talk about one thing under critical thinking. You may ask yourself, how is this related to time management? Just give me a couple minutes and then hopefully you can see how it connects. So this pyramid is called Bloom's taxonomy. It was created by Benjamin Bloom. I believe it was 1953. I could be a couple years off. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. And essentially, all that you need to know about this is that it is a framework for understanding how to learn. For example, the pyramid is divided into 6 different categories. They each represent a different level of learning. The base level of learning here, the purple one, is defined as knowledge, memorizing something word for word, not necessarily understanding. I think oftentimes we can kind of conflate knowledge and understanding together. If you feel like you can repeat a definition word for word, you might feel like I can answer a test question on that. But what happens when the test question asks you to explain, for example, what that definition means? Simply knowing the definition word for word could maybe help you choose the right answer in a multiple choice question. But in a free response question, if you're asked to summarize something, just knowing the definition word for word doesn't help you. So that's where we get into comprehension, the second level, restating something in your own words or summarizing. So not only do you have the definition memorized, but you could also summarize it in your own words and explain it back to somebody. Application is the next level. This is using information to solve problems and identifying connections. A lot of test questions in college are going to put you here in this category of application where you have gotten like a definition of a topic or a concept. You kind of have a summary in how you would explain that, what it means. You're then asked to take that information and apply it to a problem. It could be you learning a formula. You memorize the formula for your math class. You understand why the formula exists because you're looking for this sort of information, and then you apply that formula to solve the problem. That's a very basic example. The next level is analysis. So that's identifying components, determining arrangement, logic, and semantics. Think of this one kind of like comparing and contrasting. Not only can you apply information to solve problems, but you can also see how the information is similar or different to other concepts that might be related to it. So this could be, I was a psychology undergrad. So for my psychology peeps out there, this could be like understanding the difference between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. They're connected to, they're all connecting to the brain, the total nervous system, but what does the central nervous system do? What does the peripheral nervous system do? How are they the same? How are they different? That's being able to analyze information to not only solve problems, but recognize how they're similar and different. Evaluation, that's making decisions and supporting your views. This is essentially being asked to justify why something is correct or not. This could be a free response question. This could be an argumentative essay. This could be a debate in class or a presentation. Basically, you have a fundamental understanding of the material that you are able to make a decision with it and support your views with whatever peripheral information you have. And then finally, create. This is combining information to form a unique product. This could be making a research poster or writing a paper or any kind of thing that you're creating. Maybe it's even creating like a Kahoot quiz because you know the material so well, you want to quiz yourself and your friends. You create a Kahoot quiz, and you know all the material. So why am I talking about Bloom's taxonomy when it comes to time management? Well, the main reason is Bloom's taxonomy, specifically when it comes to studying for your courses, can help you save time by recognizing where you're at regarding what your level of learning is and what you need to do to get to that next level. It can help you make your studying more effective and like specifically time effective. For example, if you are in a class and the professor is expecting you to be able to solve a lot of problems and show your work, whether it's a chemistry course, a math course, whatever it is, simply memorizing the formulas or I haven't taken chemistry for so long, so I can't give a good chemistry example, but simply memorizing the process of something doesn't necessarily mean that you can use that information to solve the problem. So in addition to memorizing a formula and being able to summarize what you use the formula for, you have to practice applying that formula. So doing practice questions, meeting with a tutor and going through practice questions together, forming a group study session and quizzing each other, catching errors in each other's work. That can be a more effective use of your time than sitting alone in the library, reading through your textbook or your notes, for example. That's not to say that rereading your notes or like studying your textbook is a bad use of your time, depending on where you're trying to be at in your level of learning, right? That could be really good for knowledge and comprehension, right? What do we talk about in class today? What makes sense? What doesn't? What can I summarize in my own words? After that, you have to do something that's going to get you to that higher level of learning. There's a really good article that I can, when this gets distributed or like posted, I can also like have that article there. But if you just search Bloom's taxonomy, you can find like a ton of stuff about it. I know it might be like a little confusing at the beginning, but essentially, if you look at Bloom's taxonomy as a way to guide your learning, it can save you time in the long run because you recognize what you need to do when. If you already have something memorized, you don't need to spend time rereading your textbook to get the definition. You can work on something else. If you feel like you're already really good at using practice problems and solving them and showing your work, maybe you need to start looking at analysis and identifying, how is this similar or different to something else? Can I answer a free response question on this? Hopefully that made sense. Again, if there's questions at the end, I'm happy to answer them. Okay, specific study strategies. I'm going to talk about one strategy that I feel like is, actually, I think I'm talking about two that are related to time management that not only can make your study more effective, but also help you to find a proper balance of your time. So this graph comes from a study that is commonly called the curve of forgetting. It was conducted by the University of California in Bakersfield, and the topic that they were researching was retention of material over time. What contributes to retention? What takes away from it? And this graph shows their takeaways. So there's two lines represented here. The black line is group one. They were kind of the control group. And then the teal grayish line is the experimental group. So let me tell you what the study was, what happened, and then hopefully the graph makes a little more sense. So on the x-axis there at the bottom of the graph, we have the time elapsed. So on day one, all the students in this study went to a lecture. They were all in the same course. So they went to their lecture, they listened to the professor, they asked questions, they took notes. They all pretty much did the same thing. The black line represents students that took about an hour of their time to study the material they learned in that lecture, and that's it. They didn't do anything else because they had other classes to study for. They had other things they needed to get done. They had, a lecture in a couple days. And so, they felt if I study this lecture, then next time I go to class, I'll study the next lecture, so on and so forth. The other group of students, the teal line, represents students that not only studied for maybe an hour after the lecture, but then over the period of about a month, they took time, short amounts of time, 5, 10, 15 minutes, and reviewed that material again. So not only did they study the material after class, but you see here on day 2, they studied it for 10 minutes, the same material again from that same lecture. And then we get to day 7 and they're still reviewing it for 5 or 10 minutes. By the time we get to day 30, they've still been taking time over the course of a month, very short amount of time, 5, 10 minutes to check in with that same material again and review it, make sure their understanding is up to date and that they're answering any questions they have about the material. 2 big takeaways here. First, if you look at day 2, the y-axis is measuring understanding or retention of material over time. On day 2, the control group of students, represented by the black line, had already forgotten about 50% of what they had learned in the lecture within 24 hours. So that would be like if you came to this presentation today, within 24 hours, you'd forget half of what I said. The teal line, their level of comprehension or retention of the material stayed high. Over the course of a month, the control group, again, the black line, they had forgotten up to 90% of what they'd learned from that class that happened on day 1 of the experiment. Because courses in college are often about a month, maybe 5 to 6 weeks long, this study is really relevant here. Imagine the stuff that you learned about during the first week of class. By the middle of September, if you haven't been reviewing it, there's a good chance that you're going to forget a really big chunk of it, which can come back to bite you when you're taking an exam. Exams aren't everything. I want to make that clear. You are worth way more than a test score. But that's how college works, is being able to demonstrate your knowledge, usually in an exam format, to earn your degree. So it's important to at least do well enough on tests that you can pass your class. So the main takeaway here, not only is this a study strategy, it can be a time management strategy as well. Within 24 hours of learning something, you should review it. Whatever it is, if you want to remember it, whatever it is, within 24 hours, you should take some time to study. In terms of how you study, it's obviously going to vary a bit depending on your personal preferences, what the material is, how much material there is. But some good rules of thumb are to review the major concepts, right? What did we talk about in class today? Okay, I'll use my psychology undergrad example again. We talked about the anatomy of the brain. Okay, great. There were 3 main divisions of the brain: forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Let me review each one of those. Make sure I remember, what are the main parts of each division of the brain? What does each part do? Are there any questions I have? Those can be some good things to do when you're reviewing. Review major concepts, make a list of what you understand and what you don't understand, and then focus on what you don't understand. Go to your professor's office hours and ask questions. Meet with a TA, meet with a tutor, meet with an SI leader. Then take time to study that material for short amounts of time frequently throughout the unit or throughout the semester. It can be really short. It can be 5, 10, 15 minutes. We all can find 5, 10, 15 minutes here and there. Maybe you're on the train. Pull out your notes on the train. They can be crowded, so maybe it's hard to do that. Maybe you even just have like some screenshots on your phone of your notes and you read through those. Maybe you're waiting for your drink at Starbucks. I was at Starbucks yesterday and it took me like 20 minutes to get my drink. Could take 10 of those minutes to review material from a class. Why? Because you have to wait there for your drink anyway, right? So you might as well use that time review. Even if you show up to class early, maybe you got to class 10 minutes early, pull out your notes, review what you just talked about in the previous lecture. Are there any questions that are popping out at you right away? Ask your professor at the beginning of the lecture and clarify your understanding so that when you get into that next section of the lecture, you're not falling behind in any sense. Curve of forgetting. Your retention of material stays high if you review it frequently. It doesn't even have to be super long, 5, 10, 15 minutes frequently. This next study strategy kind of synergizes with that because it's a way that you can condense all the material down in a way that's easier to digest and more accessible. So going back to Bloom's taxonomy. Oh, sorry, my camera just froze and I thought I dropped the call, but I think I'm still here. Hopefully I'm still here. If you can't hear me, you should tell me. So going back to Bloom's taxonomy, we talked about how in order to get to higher levels of learning, we have to do different things. A summary sheet is a really good way to not only ascend the pyramid of Bloom's taxonomy to get from knowledge to comprehension to application to analysis, but it's also a really effective time management strategy because it can condense all the resources that you need to be reviewing into one spot. So a summary sheet, essentially, it can be a physical or a digital document, is essentially a summary of important terms and ideas, definitions of vocabulary, connections between ideas, example problems or diagrams, questions you think might be on the test, and then content you're confused about. So imagine you are studying for a biology class and you have a textbook and you have lecture slides, and then you have the notes that you took during the lecture because maybe the professor elaborates on the slides. That's already 3 different sources you're bouncing between to study. A summary sheet grabs all the most important bits from all 3 of those places and puts them in one place. That not only helps you to have all of that material in the same place so that you can manage your time more effectively because all the material you need to know is in one place, but it also helps to deepen your understanding of the material because the act of reading information, taking it all in, summarizing it, and spitting it back out onto a page is studying in and of itself. Studies show that writing something down improves retention, and summarizing something in your own words improves it even more. So instead of just rewriting your notes to study, summarize them. Pull all the most important stuff. Read your textbook for sure, but every time you study, you don't need to read like the 30-page chapter. Pull the most important stuff. Grab those definitions. Grab the diagrams. Grab the connections between ideas. Grab the example questions that are maybe at the end of the chapter and use those to guide your study. And then when you're taking your 5, 10, 15 minutes to review, you've got your summary sheet there. That's a lot easier than pulling out your textbook and the slides and the notes and any other resources you're using. You've got it all in one space, and you can use that summary sheet frequently to review your material. In terms of how often you make a summary sheet, that's up to you. You know yourself better than anybody. So whether you do it for every chapter, maybe you do it once per unit as part of your like exam review process. Maybe you do it every week so that you're up to date. If you have class Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe Friday afternoon, Friday night, Saturday, you make a summary sheet of everything that you have learned that week. And then you can organize your summary sheets that way. So you know, okay, week 1 was this, week 2 was this, week 3 was this. Make them however you want. There's no structure. That's what it should include. And keep them short. Don't feel like you have to write everything down. Grab the most important stuff. Okay. I realize that we're running a little bit short on time, ironically, so we're gonna speed through procrastination a little bit. The irony in that is so great. So procrastination is a super common problem. Out of all the students that come to talk to me individually with learning consultations, I would say time management and procrastination is by far and away the most common thing. So if this is something you struggle with, 1, you shouldn't feel bad about it because it's super common. And 2, because it's such a common problem, we have a lot of strategies to combat it. So pomodoro technique is a great way to combat procrastination. I procrastinate when I get overwhelmed. That's like my stress response is to not do it because I don't want to be stressed. So avoiding it is how I deal with my stress. Something like the pomodoro technique, where you are breaking a big task down into smaller chunks of time, is a great way to combat procrastination. It also is kind of like a snowball in and of itself, where the more that you do it, the easier it gets to do it, which makes the act of procrastination less likely to happen. And you are motivating yourself because you are recognizing that the work that you need to do is being done. Also reward yourself when you've completed something. Be aware of like time and like any like realistic expectations you need to set. But I know it can be hard, right? Trust me, the first thing that I want to do when I get home every single night is play video games. That's what I'm waiting to do. I do my very best to do what I need to do when I get home, whether that's responding to emails or doing some chores, walking my dog, maybe working on an outline of a paper, and then video games is my reward before I need to go to sleep. I know it can be really hard because you've already spent the whole day doing whatever you're doing. If you can do one thing that you need to do and then you take that reward, that's a win. Somebody specifically submitted the question. I have them here. I find it hard to start something. Once I get started, I can sink hours into it. How do I make the starting process easier? To whoever submitted that question, totally right there with you. That's my biggest challenge too. Once I get started, I feel like I could cruise through something, even if it's a really big task. But you ask yourself, how do I get started? A couple of things. First thing that I've written down here on the slide is just do it. We've all seen that Shia LaBeouf video, right? Or am I too old for people to know what that is, right? Just do it. You should just do it. The hardest part is getting started. If you can convince yourself to even just do like 5 minutes of something, you're probably going to find it easier to do 10 minutes of it, 15, 20, whatever it looks like. Environment also plays a huge part in that. Limit distractions, and be in a place where you're going to be inspired to work. So be away from distractions, right? If you're in a space where there's lots of people and noise distracts you, go somewhere quiet. If your screen distracts you, give your phone to someone you trust, or put it under your bed or where you won't see it. Also, don't study in your bed. I think that's a pretty common thing that happens. Could be like a lack of space, could be a comfort thing, but there's studies that show that you are intrinsically less motivated to work on stuff if you study where you sleep, because your brain is already associating that area with relaxing, sleeping, not staying like focused on tasks, because we associate that with sleeping or scrolling on our phones or watching movies. So if you can, don't study in your bed. At least study on the floor next to your bed, or like a desk or a kitchen table or a study room. Just don't study where you sleep, because your brain is already going to be a little bit checked out. If you feel like procrastination is a very common struggle in your life, in spite of attempts to combat it, I guess, you may also want to look into talking to the Center for Disability and Access about getting accommodations. Maybe you need more time to complete your assignments. Maybe you need more time to take tests. That's a route you can take. I would also recommend meeting with a learning center staff member or a student success coach to talk through strategies you can work on over time and track your progress. It may also be worth speaking to a mental health professional about it. Part of the reason why I discovered that I possibly have ADHD and am pursuing a diagnosis is because every time I met with my therapist, I would beat myself up and said, I never get anything done on time. I'm so frustrated by having the same conversations with my boss and my boyfriend and my professors. And I keep saying, I'm not lazy. I want to do it. I just can't do it. And my therapist finally was like, maybe you have like just something in your brain that makes it like that. And maybe we should investigate it. So if you feel like that's a common problem for you, there's no shame in talking to a professional about it and maybe pursuing that route as well. Okay, so I'm going to try and really briefly give you a summary of our services so that we have time for questions at the end. The Learning Center is located on the first floor of the library in room 1705. Our website is learningcenter.utah.edu. All the information I'm going to talk about can be found there in more depth, but I'm going to briefly talk about the 3 main services we offer to students. First, all of our services are free. So that includes our tutoring services, supplemental instruction, and learning consultations. They're free to all students. You never have to pay anything. Our tutoring appointments are by appointment only. Well, we don't have any drop-in tutoring at the Learning Center. So you go to our website, there's a big red button that says schedule a tutoring appointment. You log into our scheduling software, which is called Penji. Then there will be a full list of courses. You will select the course you want tutoring in. Then it will display all the appointments that are available for the next 7 days, and you can make an appointment. Those appointments are available in person or online, and the tutors have flexible hours. So I would say 8 or 9 times out of 10, there's probably somebody available at a time that you are also available. We cover over 100 courses. We have tutors for all general education courses, and then we have tutors that go up to at least the 3,000 level in math, bio, chem, and physics too. We have foreign language, we have computer science, we have psychology, we have a couple business, we have tons of courses, a full list of courses on our website if you need it. Supplemental instruction is a group-focused resource where students who have previously taken the class called SI leaders schedule free organized study sessions for historically difficult courses. The full list of courses are on our website, but we have SI leaders for anatomy, intro to psychology, organic chemistry, general chemistry, mechanical engineering, math, statistics. If you're in any of those courses, you can attend these free group study sessions, no charge. The times and locations are also on the website as well. Finally, learning consultations, as I've mentioned, are a free service that we have at the Learning Center where you can meet with one of our staff members individually to talk about any kind of academic success skill you want to work on, and work on them together. Those appointments are 30 minutes. They can be in person or online. And the common topics are things like time management, procrastination, how to take notes, how to study, how to take a test anxiety, critical thinking. You can make those appointments on our website as well. So that's everything I have. Again, as Shelly mentioned, we have this event evaluation, and if you are a UROP scholar, make sure that you fill this out so you can get credit for attending the event. And then here is all the information for the Office of Undergraduate Research, their hours of operation, their website, and their email as well. So we have about 7 minutes left. I would love to take some questions. Let me open up the chat and see what we've got. I'm going to drop my email in the chat as well. If you have any specific questions about the Learning Center or about this presentation, there's my email as well. You can send me any questions you have. I would love to connect with you and answer anything that you have. Not a question, but I found this presentation super helpful. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really hope that this was useful in some way. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, you don't have to try every single thing I talked about. Maybe pick 1 or 2 that you're really feeling good about and start from there. And then feel free to add more in as you continue working. But you don't need to try everything all at once.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you very much. This was very, very helpful, especially for anybody, whether they're a student or not. I just want to remind everyone about the evaluation form. I just put the link in the chat again, and just make sure you're app scholars that you fill that out to get credit for attending this event. And thank you very much again, Taylor.